Peace, everyone. Yusef here. I want to welcome everybody to the show today. Got a very good show today, a special show today. We have a special guest. Mr. Stephen Brewer is back again by popular demand. I've had a lot of individuals, come in and ask me about Mr. Brewer. Individuals come on my show discussing private placement memorandums, they're kind of interested in the DTC or just overall private banking in particular. Okay. So today we're going to get into that conversation a little bit because I've been knowing Mr. Brewer for a while and I understand the information he possesses. He's worldwide. He's a well-traveled man. He has actually monetized instruments. He's been into this business. He's done a lot of the things that all of you think about doing. He's done it already, and that's why I stay close to Mr. Brewer because you already know I'm not going to have anybody on this channel that I haven't vetted. I've been like that ever since my blog talk days. I haven't vetted, but I personally know Mr. Brewer. He's an associate of mine. He's a partner of mine. He's a friend of mine. And I'm going to grace all of you today with his presence to share his information with you. And I want to welcome you to the show. How you doing, Mr. Brewer?
Doing good. I wouldn't say grace, but I appreciate those warm accolades. I appreciate it. Hope your audience is doing okay. It's been a while since we did this. Had an opportunity to talk to your audience a few months back, but yeah, back.
Okay, I'm greeting. We glad happy to have you back. On my show, just the other couple of days ago, there was somebody who called in my show and they were talking about that this is the information, private placement memorandums, and being a DTC participant and, and making public offerings of, whatever it is that you have collateralized, I guess, to make a public offering. But could you speak on that a little bit? What is the significance of private placement memorandums and, what are the possibilities? And, it's something that I think it's a kind of nebulous to a lot of individuals and not very clear on a lot of this information. And maybe you could offer some clarity exactly what is a private placement memorandum?
Well, it's just that. It's a memorandum. It's a document that outlines a description of a transaction that you intend to monetize or to create a bond that's sellable, that's monetizable. You're able to generate and raise capital from. But a memorandum is nothing more than a document that outlines the four corners of the information that you will provide to the investor or the buyer of your bond.
Okay. You're using the word bond a lot, and we hear that word a lot. Could you kind of touch on that a little bit? What do we mean when you say a bond? What is that?
Well, a bond is nothing more than a security. It's a document that allows an individual to operate within a realm of securities type of activity, which is governed by the SEC. However, on the private side of it, it's not governed by the SEC, but it is structured within the bounds of the SEC. Private placement memorandums and private placement structures are simply exempted entities or structures that the SEC allow for an individual to go to the private side. You have a public side and you have a private side. And typically on the public side, one is operating through the DTC and typically in publicly traded situations, trade platforms such as NASDAQ, Stock Exchange, New York Stock Exchange, Chicago Stock Exchange. And so the difference in the two are between the categories of exemptions versus non-exemptions. And again, all this is governed by the SEC, which is known as Reg D, Regulation D, 506B and 506C. Typically, is what a private individual operates under.
Is there some advantage? Because I keep hearing you use these terms public and private.
Okay.
Public and private. Is there advantage to one to the other? Is there advantage of being private as opposed to public, or is there an advantage to public versus private? And what is the distinction between these two? What is the significance of these two spheres of operation that you're talking about? Could you explain that a little bit?
That's a very good question. Very good question. It depends on your level of taste of scrutiny. In a private side of structuring private placement memorandums, description of a private transaction is basically uh, the difference is you do not have to disclose your documentation to the federal government, to the SEC, in terms of your structure. The private placement memorandum that outlines the terms of the expectation of the capital raise or the bond that you would potentially sell to an individual to raise capital, which in essence, that's what it's all about is raising capital. Uh, I understand many of your listeners are often trying to monetize their birth certificate or some other type of certificate. Well, in their mind, they're utilizing a bond that's a value, a perceived value that they told that is there. Well, when you utilize the 506 Reg D 506B and C, you're putting yourself in a position that information between you and the individual that's willing to value your project, your bond that's tied to the project, and they're willing to purchase your bond. Basically, they're exchanging their collateral for your bond tied to your project
Okay.
or your business. If you're getting funding for your business, this is not just a capital raise for a project. People can raise capital for their businesses as well. Typically, when you're trying to do something in the public, it requires something that's called a prospectus. You have a prospectus in public, and you have a private placement memorandum, which is in the private. The difference in the two, the prospectus is about a 200 to 300 page document that's submitted to the SEC that typically outlines your yearly financials, your credibility, your assets, and everything that will identify your bond, your company, whether you're trying to take something public or you're trying to raise capital through the public sector. And so there's unlimited scrutiny, ongoing scrutiny that goes with that process. A lot of people like to utilize in that process, or they don't like to, they have to utilize the DTC, the Depository Trust. And this is simply a location where documents are stored and housed. They are not a facility that vets your documents or vets your bond. They don't create the value. They just simply it's a transferring system online.
Let me interrupt you real quick. I'm sorry to interrupt you because you're flowing on this, but I need some clarification. Okay, so the DTC doesn't vet anything.
No, it does not.
Okay, so what is the significance of getting an CUSIP number and ISIN number? Yeah, I thought a CUSIP number was some sort of evidence that there's some sort of vetting that actually occurred.
No, a CUSIP number is nothing more than a United States identifier of a document. And typically, when an individual initiates that identifier, it's a temporary identifier number until the other entities around DTC actually do the vetting. There's several different uh, departments, so to speak, individuals. Case in point, when you're trying to get a document or a bond listed or to deposit itself within the DTC finally, ultimately there are other individuals that have to vet your document or your bond or whatever your securities is.
Right.
I.e., you have to have an attorney that's willing to write a a a letter that outlines everything that he's gone through, your commercial or your corporate information, and give his opinion. It's an opinion letter. Then there's other entities that play a role. None of these entities can be circumvented, no matter how hard you try. and there's validation that happens within the depository trust that all these check marks must meet.
Now, this is only in the public. We're
This
talking
is
about
this is
public.
only in the public.
Okay.
But anytime you're dealing with DTC, it doesn't matter whether you're in the public or private, because a private placement structure, depending on the sophistication of the investor, may require that he utilize DTC for transfer,
Okay.
as opposed to utilizing the transfer for any other purpose. It just depends on the sophistication of that individual and your willingness to operate within the DTC structure. But keep in mind, operating in the DTC is overseen by the Federal Reserve. So one cannot surmise that operating or working within the DTC, that is a private structure, because it is not.
It's not. Okay. Are there ways to operate outside the DTC? Can this business be conducted outside of the regulatory infrastructure?
Well, that's what private placements are. It's just that it is privately placed. You have to create a structure that shows the individual that you intend to raise capital with that there's viability to the outcome of him getting his money back plus an interest.
Mm.
There's what is called a interest rate tied to a bond, a coupon, and a maturity date.
Now, wait a minute. Let me ask you: are you the one to create you offer that interest rate and maturity date, or do they
No,
put that stipulation on you?
no, actually, you're the one that would create it, because actually, keep in mind, it's your privacy, it's your deal, and you're offering it to someone as value.
Okay.
It's up to that individual to accept your offer as value, as fair trade.
And this is what they call an offering.
It's called an offering.
Okay.
That's
All
correct.
right.
However, it's a private offering. That information is not transferred to the DTC. The only time that after that any agency gets anything, which is your state agency, it's a form that you have to file with the state, and it's not describing your offer, it's not describing your bond, it's not describing the terms and conditions. It's just simply stating that a transaction took place. It's just placed on record. And so that's typically the Form 55 that's sent into the state itself, and then it places it on record, which ultimately the investor has some measure of consolation that in the event that you don't uphold your end of the bargain of returning at the maturity of the bond the money that was borrowed, they have some type of recourse. Um,
Which is access to some sort of collateral.
that's correct. Whether it's the project, the company, or whatever the structure is behind your bond, there has to be some type of recourse, and that's what the private placement memorandum outlines. But more importantly, the indenture agreement or the security agreement outlines and details just the contract, terms, conditions, repayment, maturity dates, coupon, interest rates, what happens in the event of a default, what is their capabilities of recapturing what they're potentially losing,
Right.
what's at stake.
So, in other words, any potential investor, when they're looking at your offering, they're determining whether or not, okay, is there sufficient collateral supporting that offering?
That's
And what is
correct.
the likelihood of them actually making money? In other words, I think a lot of people in this space, they think that they can just get an ISIN number and offer an instrument and somebody just gives them money.
Well, who's going to be the investor that's willing to give it to them? The government's not going to give it to them.
I've said that many times, do you have to have some sort of project or something?
Well, let's think about that question. What will create value? Debt. Okay. So one has to create a debt structure that there's an obligation tied to it.
Okay.
The value comes in the creation of the debt.
Okay.
It's an IOU.
Right.
Your car note is an IOU. Your mortgage is an IOU. But you notice banks are quick to run and create those IOUs, right?
Right.
Why? Because now there's a legitimate instrument in place that creates interest, compounding interest. They're not going to run and give you something a mano. Here's a document, here's $5 for $5.
So there's some sort of assessment of whether or not you are capable of servicing the debt.
That is correct. So if you say, I'm going to hand you me $5 and I'm going to hand you $7 back. Well, to a certain person, that's a deal. It's even sweeter when you hand me $5 and I hand you $9 back. You're willing to wait a certain period of time, right?
Right.
Well, that's what this is all about. But the eye of the beholder on the investor side says, okay, when I give you this $5, show me on paper how you're going to pay me back in 5 years. So in 5 years, when I give you this $5 back, I'm really expecting around 11. Well, their investment strategy allows them to wait, knowing that their money have grown at that interest rate over a period of time.
I had a caller call in and the other day, and they had royalties coming from ASCAP, and they were asking about you, and they wanted to, I guess, create some sort of private placement memorandum based off their catalog of songs that they have written.
Okay.
And I asked them where they were receiving royalties, and she said yes. I think this was Barry Gordy, the relative to Barry Gordy, or believe it or not. And but what is the likelihood of that? Because I think that even in this particular space, I know there's a wide range of availability for creativity. Anything that has value.
Anything that has value.
Anything that has value. And but I was kind of wondering because she was asking me. I didn't hear what her project was, but because she needs a project. I think a lot of people think they can just make an offering based off the fact, well, I have assets. Okay, but if they have assets that, let's say they're income producing, there's some value there, but do they need a project too, right?
Well, not necessarily. Again, depends on the investor and their appetite for what you're offering.
Gotcha.
Everything's creative.
So in other words, they'll just give you some money just for the fact you got sufficient collateral to support the obligation.
Well, let's use you and I relationship
Okay.
as an example.
All right.
You know my track record.
Yes, I do.
I run across a project that I'm working on, and I says, Joe, hey, I know you're sitting on some capital. I have a scenario I'd like to run by you. You're like, sure, Steve, what is it? I said, look, I'm going to issue you a bond in the tune of $250,000.
Okay.
I feel very confident that my project is going to generate me X amount of dollars. At the end of the project, let's say it's 5 years, I would like to give you $500,000 back. Would you take that deal?
So I'm making an investment of how much?
$250,000.
$250,000.
I'm asking you to wait out.
The $5,000. I'm making a 50%
return at 5 years.
At 5 years.
But I have an interest payment every quarter for 5 years.
Okay, but at the end of the 5-year term, it's going to equate to $500,000.
That's correct. Would you do that deal?
Yes, I would do that. Well, that's better than money just sitting. I'm not getting that at the bank.
Correct. But I just told you the deal. You were trusting in my ability to perform, right?
Yeah, but I had sufficient underlying collateral. This is what I was told.
But it's not necessarily tied to collateral. It depends on what I offer you. What if I didn't offer you a collateral position?
What else would there be other than a collateral? How am I secured?
My trustworthiness is what you, as an investor,
that
would
means
go
we
up.
got a good relationship.
Of course.
Okay.
And typically under 506B, those are all good relationships that they understand the individual that have the ability to produce. Now under 506C, That's a different type of investor. They're both called accredited investors, and you have to vet out their ability, but they may require some additional things to make them happy, i.e., collateral. Again, under the private structure, you can be private and go with collateral or not. It just depends on the eyes of the beholder.
What kind of people are these who are looking at these offerings? What is the
Angel and
demographic we're
angel
looking at?
investors, they're investors that do this for a living. They have enormous amounts of money. They believe in the individual. Most of the times, people are investing in the individual, not the deal.
Right.
I think you've seen on Shark Tank many times. It says, "Look, I don't really care about the deal, but I like you."
Like you.
Right. So it really comes down to that, and even there on Shark Tank, those were private placement deals.
Wow.
You just witnessed private placement deals. Every time you look at Shark Tank, you're
Look
looking
at a
at a
private placement.
exactly.
Wow.
That is not a bank structure. That's a private placement deal.
So
You've never heard them say, "I'm going to take you to my banker," have you?
no. So this is essentially private banking.
It's exactly what it is.
This is the definition of private
It's
banking.
removing the bank out of the way, and you're literally creating your terms and your conditions based on the person on the other side accepting and agreeing.
After studying this, it appears to me that banks are something like brokers. I think they're called intermediaries, but they're kind of like because I know the Treasury
Well,
Department is the actual
let's.
entity.
I can tell you a little bit about banking. I've had the opportunity to actually structure private banks overseas and to actually set up, be a part of a couple of banks here in the U.S. And
Sip on this.
typically, what an individual do, you formulate anywhere from 10 to 20 investors,
Right.
have capital in excess of $100,000, and you're able to create your initial capital raise with those investors. You basically create those deposits. You place those deposits on hand, and then you're operating with the banking system, regulatory agencies, let's say state regulatory, or if you're going federal regulatory. And ultimately, once you have those deposits on hand, you have a certain amount of time to begin to increase your deposits. But once you place your deposits on hand with the Federal Reserve, they give you 10 times your $1.
Really?
And now you're able to take the 10 times $1 and put that back into market to grow. So basically, all you're seeing what bankers are doing is taking your deposits times 10, putting it back in the market and charging the interest rates, late fees, and things of this nature. And that's how banks grow and become who they are. So they're not really brokers, they truly are bankers. They're just utilizing the Federal Reserve System that will all on deposits on hand will give you 10 times one.
Wow. Wow. I keep hearing this term that pops up a lot. It's called a CUSIP number and an ISIN number.
Okay.
People talk about I need to track down my CUSIP number, and and at that point I'm like, okay, well, what? What are you going to do when you find the
hmm
CUSIP number? What is the significance of these identifiers? I know CUSIP stands for Committee on Uniforms Securities Identification Process, and it's essentially like a tracking number. But
Right.
what is the significance
Well,
of these numbers?
the document is just that it's a securities, the bond, it's a securities. And there has to be a tracking system for worldwide banking to identify that instrument, its value, where it comes from, what's its maturity date, what's its coupon, uh, and all that information is you're just basically putting into a data system, a housing system, so to speak. And so individuals around the world have the ability to look at it. Nothing more than your driver's license number.
Right,
When the police pull you over, he needs to be able to identify you through your number.
right,
If he can't pull up your number, he'll put in what? Another number, date of birth.
right.
As you know, our computer system run off numbers. So the ISIN number, which is an international identifier for international bonds, is basically something that an individual have tied to whatever their banking instrument, their securities is, in order to get a full understanding of exactly what it is, terms, conditions, and you name it. So as an individual began to try to tie something to a CUSIP number, there's an enormous amount of steps that they have to take in order to make sure that those securities are properly placed into the DTC and properly described as a securities and have been vetted. It's not something that one individual can do. There's a number of individuals that they have to interact with in order to do it. I.e., you have to have a broker that even takes you to DTC. One can't go there directly.
So let me ask you this. So is this what they mean by having something on the screen? What does that mean? Having it on the screen.
Okay. Their screens, their systems like Bloomberg,
Okay.
DTC, Euroclear. These are different type of agencies. I'll give you an example. You use to your credit, Experian, Equifax, TransUnion,
Right.
and then the ultimate one, LexisNexis, right?
Right.
So they house your credit. LexisNexis house all the information. Experian, Equifax, TransUnion goes to LexisNexis and pulls up most of their information because they spend all their money compiling information sales.
Right.
Well, Euroclear, DTC, Bloomberg, those are the same type of entities that are willing to, for profit, describe your instrument and give subscriptions to institutional buyers such as uh, Charles Schwab, J.P. Morgan Chase, you Bank of America, institutional securities buyers
Right.
that you see on Wall Street. And typically, an individual like Bloomberg will go out and says, "Hey, I'll sell you our subscription because we can tell you more about this securities than the other person." The other entity comes out and says, "Hey, but we have this feature and we can tell you how long this security's been around. We can give you the rating on it. We can tell you not only the value, but we can tell you more about the company behind it."
Hmm.
And so that's what these screens are.
Oh, okay. All right. So that is something that a potential investor will resort to when he is considering offering.
That's
That's a
correct.
that's a good
Hmm.
place for them to go to. But there are instances where they operate outside that. Well, that's what the private placement is all about. Is I don't have to necessarily have something on Euroclear or anything like that. I can operate outside of that entity and do the same thing. Is that correct?
That is correct. Again, unless the investor requires you to take that method to go that in depth for him to participate. Well, let's talk about someone who would do that. We're downtown Dallas in the Tower building here, and you look at this high rise across the street, right?
Yes, yeah, we're in downtown Dallas,
Hmm.
y'all. We in some big boy stuff right here. So go
So
ahead.
let's take this building example in a private structure, which it is
Right,
privately structured. Well, the investors involved would feel much more comfortable if they were to receive, have their bonds delivered via DTC,
right,
because that adds another protection layer of it being in the system. It doesn't make it public.
right,
It just gives a description of the bond that's being transferred to them. So let's just say that they're gonna come to the conclusion it's going to take them 500 million to build this building. And so the accredited investor who has the funds, their financial team and their legal team says, "Hey, yeah, we like to do this deal, but let's just go ahead and get them to place these bonds on DTC so that we can take delivery." And
right,
through their own equity firm or their own financial firm, they would do that transaction of delivery through DTC, which gives an extra added layer of protection for their repercussions in the event there's a default.
mm. You know, I've been around you for a minute,
Mm.
and I've heard you make this statement before that you said like the majority of these private placements are fraudulent in nature, um, and I'm appreciative
Well,
that.
let me Clarify that it's not the private placements that's fraudulent in nature. You will find that there are a lot of false and fraudulent bonds that are issued
Oh,
in
okay.
this industry. And those bonds are typically issued from like Singapore, Hong Kong, and places of that nature, different banks of that style. Uh, they'll create what's called a bond that you can lease
Right.
for collateral.
Right.
And there, there's a high volume of fraudulent certificates or bonds that are out there that brokers are passing off as legitimate. In times past, you didn't have a way to vet them unless you were in my industry and you were able to log into certain compliance applications. And I won't mention those, but you would have had to have those in order to do that now with AI and everything out, an individual can vet the fraud fairly quickly now.
Let me ask you this question. What is it? Because we got some people, we got a lot of people that are tuning in right now.
hmm
What is it that you can offer individuals, in this space? Because, somebody said, well, you can learn this on the Federal Reserve website.
I would encourage them to do that. This is not for everybody. I'm here because of you. I've gotten backlash for even sharing a degree of this information because it can be confusing and it can be twisted in so many ways that there's a fraudulent misuse.
Listen, you don't have to sell
Mhm.
me. You can go on the Federal Reserve website, but that I already know. That's not,
Well,
you
let's
say you're
just,
gonna get this off the Federal Reserve website.
and
I'm like,
I would encourage them to. I'm not a person that I mean, I did webinars and created a master class for your listeners, and I was excited about the knowledge that they were wanting to participate in. It's for those individuals. It's not for the individuals that think we're sellouts or that they represent the white man or whatever the case is. This is a real industry. This is life changing information. It's not for everybody. There's only a few people in the world that do this actually. Now, as it relates to private placement capital raises, if an individual Googled that, you would see that over last year, probably in private placement structures, there was close to $2 trillion done in private structuring and private capital raise. That's not a kept secret, but it's a kept secret among certain groups.
right.
And you typically see when you look around and drive downtown, whatever your city is, you can see typically those are individuals that are doing private capital raises. You see these large subdivisions. Rarely do you see bank names on buildings like you did in times past. And I can assure you of one thing: when you saw a bank name, one of the partners was a chairman in the bank. One of the reasons we started the bank in our early days, and in my early 20s, I actually started a credit union. So I've been in this industry for a very long time, and there's a lot of hidden gems in this industry. But when you do see a bank name attached to any construction or development, there's an enormous amount of dollars raised on the private side and the public side that goes through the bank and creates collateral, 10 exit, and then distributes the loan to the project. But rarely do you see on these big multi-million dollar projects that these are bank lenders. These are all private capital raise projects.
You know, it was my understanding that there's more money than investments. Is that true?
That is true. That is very true. Because investments are vetted and scratched out um, all the time. And so the money remains there and ready to be lent out for the right project, the right structure,
So,
the right person.
so in other words, if you come up with the right, Ron LeGrand, he made this statement. It just stuck with me forever. He said, if you can't make money without money, you can't make money with money.
That's true.
And it is true. I proved it to myself. I had a real estate when I first got into real estate. I was listening to Ron LeGrand and a lot of guys, and he was saying if you can't make money without money, you can't make money with money. So I went out to prove it to myself, and what I did was, and this goes into what you're talking about. I didn't have a car, I didn't have any money. I got a backpack on every day. It's 100 degrees outside, and I'm walking through neighborhoods looking for vacant houses.
Hmm.
And every vacant house I would come across, I'd write down the address. Okay. I think I got to a point where I had about 200 addresses that I'd accumulated over a certain amount of time. Uh, where is that at, man? Just, but I had about 200 addresses that I accumulated over a certain amount of time. And once I got these 200 addresses, I had to force myself to go to the next step and say, hey, you got to contact these people. And so I got on the internet. The first thing I did was I went to a website, see if I could find them. I could only find probably about 30%. Then I called information, probably found about another 25%. Then I started mailing out letters to these individuals. And then an individual finally called me. Uh, and I started calling them, actually. I started calling them. Hold on just a second. This girl's calling me on live. We'll hit you back. Um, uh, and then what I
That
did
was
was,
his banker, by the way.
yeah. uh, I started. I should have put that on Do Not Disturb. I Well, anyway, when I started, I had these 200 addresses, and I went to the tax assessor's office and found out who the owners were. Matter of fact, a lot of them, some of them were owned by trust. I couldn't find out who owned them, and I sent out letters to these people, and then I started calling them. And the seventh person I called, he agreed to meet with me, and I went over there and I negotiated a price with him. Ended up signing a contract, gave myself 30 days to close, and then I did an assignment of contract. I ended up making about $5,000 off the deal, and I probably spent about $35. I spent $10 giving him consideration for the contract when I signed the contract, and then I spent another $25 on an ad in the newspaper,
Hmm.
and all the ad said was handyman special, deep discounts. So what it was is I created value. I went out and found a property with equity in it, secured that property, and then made an offering of it out to the public, to investors. They saw that and they came out and started bidding on it. And then I took the highest bidder, or the bidder that I felt comfortable with. Is that something similar to what this is all about in
It's
some respect?
exactly similar because it all was a derivative of debt. There was a debt that was there. The owner had something of value. You had the ability to say, if I hand you $5, am I able to get seven in return? And you were. And you duplicated the process to the person you assigned it to. You says, look, I have value, and if you hand me this, you're ultimately able to get $7. So it's the exact same chain that has been going on since time, in terms of creating value and creating the ability to transact value. This is about transacting value. And often, I understand in your space, individuals are looking for documents that they currently own to create that value. One has to ask themselves in that scenario, who's willing to value that for them?
Uh,
Who's willing to transact that for them? And be realistic with the outcome of the answer, not some contrived thought process that someone else has populated over time. I've looked at all those scenarios myself because I'm in the business. Why wouldn't I try to monetize my birth certificate if it was a true value, I'd be the first one. Actually, I was the first one to, run and try and do it. Went to 55 Water Street and got rejected. Is how I really learned
And that
about.
was something I always wondered. I understood that. See, the thing about the birth certificate, I think a lot of people were misinformed about it. The birth certificate was evidence that you are a real living soul and that the real person has value because he's capable of performing labor. And as such, he's capable of holding a bond. Right? That was the theory behind all of it.
A theory.
And that translated into Treasury Direct accounts and all of these different things right here. But there was an obligation on the part of the federal government for the taking of the gold. And this is where the set-off came from. The value of what the obligation that is owed back to the American people could be set off against whatever public obligation that your so-called straw man had engaged in. And I think a lot of people got misconstrued them. But matter of fact, let me just say this yet, y'all. We having webinars, okay? Right now on SBC University, I'm offering clarification on all these different things. If you go over to the webinar, over to my website right now, for $297, I'm doing a webinar. It's going to be 2 days. I'm going to give y'all everything I know. I'm going to eliminate all the misconceptions that are surrounding all of these different things. I'm going to show you court cases that I've actually went to court and so forth and succeeded.
I think you're giving too much.
Think I'm giving too much? I know I'm giving too much, but man, in this space here, man, they thank you.
But I keep telling you that it's not your job to
Let me ask you a question. Weren't you in court with me when I went to court one time?
Yes, I was.
On a phone. You went to court with me.
That's why I stuck with you.
That's how this guy is a witness to back then when the things that I was.
I didn't believe any of it, and when I watched you in court, and then I was like, dang, Perry Mason.
He was there, okay.
But I got to be honest with you. You gave validity to some of the information that was out there. I'm a practical person.
Right.
I'm a certified paralegal. I know all phases of federal and criminal law, civil law. And so I'm a thinker. I'm a processor. And so there's a lot of validity to the information in the space on the private side, unequivocally, and you help validate that information. And what I went to go do is to validate the processes as it related to these different accounts, Treasury Direct accounts, because of my background in finance and understanding it. And there was no validity to the theory because everything is a system that was uniquely designed for a private structure. People coming on the scene think, oh, getting into the private is something new. It is not.
No, it's not.
It is not.
It's been around for a very long time.
In fact, it was the original institution.
It was.
And so under the original institution, ultimately to bring commerce into play, they had to create the commercial side because they needed a way to have checks and balances for the commercial interactions with one another.
Right.
So there had to be those structures put in place, but they would never get away from the private structure. And so what I had to do was to go find out exactly how could I play these items into the private side and capitalize on it.
Right.
Well, again, I come to find out that, yes, there was a lot of theories out there, but I had to test them, and I did. But I'm not going to get into challenging someone else's thought process and the theories that they're testing. That's for them to decide.
That's for me to take care of that. You don't have to worry about it.
I tell you all the time.
Take care of it. This is
stop spending your time on
that. I've been in this space for 20 years, man.
Yes,
and the thing about it is, I don't think what people appreciate is that I've been studying every day. That entire 20 years, I haven't taken a break.
But look how many enemies that you're taking.
I don't care.
Because
I don't care. I'll crush all of them.
I know you will.
I'll crush all of them. I don't care who they are. Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't I? If I've been studying for 20 years and somebody comes in and they've only been doing this for 5 years and they want to challenge me, why wouldn't I be up to the challenge?
Because you can't monetize their ignorance.
You see, you the money man.
You can't
It's the
monetize that.
principle of the thing, Steve. It's the principle. I know it
Well,
don't have any
I
much to
and
do
I
with business.
and I get that. I get that. But I think your listeners are smart enough and have the ability to weigh things out.
Right.
Okay, this is about weighing things out, the practicalness of it, utilizing and understanding that we are in a system. We didn't make it and we can't break it.
But I think that there are people that think we can break it. See,
Well, I give them that though,
a-
because let's be real. Let's be real. When you run up against the judges so let's talk about this space just 20 years ago.
okay.
An individual that was in the space would run up into a courtroom and spit out these things in front of a newly elected judge. They would get afraid, shut down the courtroom, send everything back, and they run to the back not knowing what to do because all the eyes are on the judge. And
Right.
people would get victories.
Right.
Rewind now, they have conferences, they've enacted laws, they've put public enemy laws
Some of the
in
things I've been
place.
saying.
Well, these things are real.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to challenge the person who's going to run up against that wall. That's for them to do. The point that I'm making is that there is a practicality to a person's thought process now. And the fact that you do have these listeners, in my opinion, is they are looking to get what is real versus what is not real. And I understand you fulfilling that role, and I applaud you for it. Um, but
It-
my thought process for your listeners, and I'll say this to you, on the private side and capital raise and creating monetization, it's real. This is something an individual should be looking at to change the trajectory of their life and that the life of their family.
you know, me studying secure party, because I've always stuck with secure party, and that is what led me into the DTC because all of it is
Mhm.
connected with each other. Secure party actually lays you a foundation for understanding all the things that you're talking about. That's why I can understand a lot of things that you're talking about because I've studied, what it means. Article 9 of the UCC, Article
Mhm.
3 of the UCC, what a bond is, what a promissory note is, two-party instrument versus a three-party instrument, drawer versus maker, all these different a lot of the terminology that is used. That's the foundation of
Mhm.
all. It's a bond,
Correct.
which is essentially a promise or a security, as you just said
Mhm.
earlier,
All wrapped into one.
all wrapped into one. And so, in understanding it, and the reason I stuck with it is because I understood, oh, this is about money, man. Anybody who think this is
And
about
that's
truth.
what I'm trying to get you to stick with is the money, not challenge these guys that call in and women and
Yeah, but you know
wanna.
what? You know what? I'm gonna say this, man. It's like, I've been doing this for 20 years, and
What's the
I,
saying? You
I,
drinking poison, hoping the other person die.
I understand,
Stop.
but I have a certain integrity. I have a certain feeling about this space,
I get it. I understand.
I'm not a fake person. I pride myself on being
Hmm.
real, and um, And the thing about it is, it just kind of hurts me to see in this space so much misinformation being disseminated. And I see how it happens. What it happens is it's almost like the rumor type thing.
Hmm.
You know, uh, I always make this analogy. If you take 100 people and put them in a circle, and then you whisper something into the person to the right's ear and you tell him to whisper it to the next person,
Hmm.
and then he's going to whisper it to the next person, it's going to go around in a circle and it's going to get back to you. Is that person going to whisper the same thing in your ear that you whispered in this person's ear, and it went around to those 100 people and came back to you?
Hmm.
And what you find is that every time one person changes one word,
Correct.
maybe this dude changes an and to an or, and this person right here he changes a thee to a with, and this person and that. But after you go through 100 times and all 100 people have changed just one word, you get back it's something completely different than what was originally said.
Correct.
And that is what is happening in this space.
Hmm.
When you have the panoramic view of being able to see everything that started from 20 years ago,
Right.
and then you see it to today. You see the birth certificate authentication. You see passport processes. You see, ecclesiastical depot. Syntax grammar. All these different things being thrown into the pot. And you were there to witness how it started. And then somebody comes to you and they want to challenge you.
Money. What's the value?
I
How
feel like
can
I got to
how
slay
can you
them.
how can you convert it?
But that is true.
If your listeners think
That,
I'm
well,
if
you
your
understand is this
if your
thing, they
listeners
think,
think I'm right, can they put some hearts on this
let me tell you
on
something.
there?
They think it's evil for you to be charging money, though. They think it's evil. They think that if you're charging money,
Do they give their services away for free?
I listen. I say the same
But you do
thing.
this for a living, right?
I do this for a living, and
Hmm.
also on top of the fact
You
is
study, you gather
I
information for a
study,
living,
I gather information,
and
I
you
read case
process it.
law, I process case law, I look
Hmm.
up words, and then I teach 4 times a week on SPC University. So you're preaching to the choir,
Hmm.
but also just based off the fact that
But let's for anyone that says that, let's give them that respect in terms of letting them feel that way. And but I'm not sure who they'll get it from.
nobody,
That
nobody,
yeah,
nobody, if
yeah.
anybody has value and really knows something, they're not giving it away for free.
No, that I mean not when this is your living.
Not when it's your living.
Because
Now, us,
I
it's a
don't know,
principle of
but the question is, will that individual go to their job and work for free?
Well, it's a principle. I don't even look at it like that. It's like, even in the Bible, Jesus said you had to give in order to receive. It's an exchange thing that commerce. What I found out, even in the spiritual world, there seems to be some sort of commerce. It's like commerce interacts in everything. It's a giving and taking. And for somebody to just want to be a taker and
Well,
not a giver.
let's give them that, and we can't argue with them thinking it's for free. The problem is that they won't get anywhere where they're trying to go. I pay for mentorship.
I pay for it too.
I pay for coaches
I pay for it
to
too.
this day.
I pay a
And
lot of money
but I
for
and
it.
one thing about the coaches that I pay for, I give you the equivalent. It's the equivalent of me giving them $1 and me getting 100 back.
Exactly.
And why do I say that?
Exactly.
I say that because it streamlines my learning to get to a point faster. Recently, I joined a mentorship and I paid a large sum of money. And it's a 6-month mentorship. And I utilized it for 2 weeks. I got what I needed in 2 weeks, and it has since made more money for me in what I learned in 2 weeks from that individual who had the key
That's right.
than what it would have took me years. It was like turning on the spigot. So if your individuals don't understand that concept, then I feel sorry for them, and hopefully one day they'll come to understand that nothing's for free in life.
And that's one thing I've been trying to kind of convey. The message I'm trying to convey is like after being in this 20 years and kind of looking at the landscape, there's a lot of angry individuals, a lot of victim-minded
Mhm.
individuals, and I'm trying to bring them out of that and make them understand.
You
Like,
can't.
look,
I just don't think you can do that. I just don't think
you
you
don't think
have.
so?
The United States government has been trying to change the minds of Hamas and Iran, their ideology for years, and it just won't happen. They don't understand their resolve. And when an individual has a resolve, one has to allow them to have that resolve. I would never sit here and try and change somebody's mind about DTC, private placement memorandum. I hope I'm speaking to one individual that would take it and learn it and become a multi-billionaire.
I don't think they understand the significance of that. Over the years, what I'm appreciative of is, the space that I've been in because it did make me a better businessman.
Hmm.
The things that I've studied, and I see the potential in things now. I
Hmm.
see where it can go, but a lot of people they think the system is just totally corrupt. And I'm like, look, man, the system is not good or bad. It just is. There may be people in it who are good or bad, but the system itself is just is. And I really think it comes down to people who don't understand the system, who try to demonize it, versus people who understand it, who profit by it.
Well, I agree with you to a certain degree because there's so much that we can't see behind the
I
scenes.
agree with that.
And so I wouldn't dare categorize it one way or the other because when I turn on the news, I know what I see and I'm horrified by it. But at the same time, I don't allow it to stop me from doing what I have to do because I have the ability to learn and to ascertain for myself
Right.
how I can make it work for me and my family and what changes I need to make for me and my family within that system. And when I find out that I can't change that system to my liking, then I have to try to navigate within it. So, individuals that feel that way, they're entitled to feel that way because whatever their life experiences are with it. And I know I've had my life experiences with it. So, for whatever I can make it do for me and my family, I do. Uh, Private structuring in your life is so important. And I just think that the group of people that you talk to and that want to listen to you, that should be, in this is my humble opinion, take care of them, nurture them, teach them, show them where there's a way out. I just don't think you can change the ideology of those who've been affected by the
And that's
system.
what I want to do. But I came to realize is that you have to understand that the system has rules and you got to follow those rules.
Hmm.
You know, and I think that a lot of people have the mindset where they don't think they have to follow those rules. That's what
Well,
I'm
if they made
battling
it
against.
flexible, if they made it flexible where you have the right to choose those rules, that's one thing. But in reality, there's statutes on the book that they don't even prosecute for. But the reality is, again, what I appreciate that you do is you do shed light on those rules, those regulations
Yes.
for those that are watching, and that come to your university, come to your webinars. I was impressed with the webinars that we had, um, the two webinars, and how attentive they were to the
I was
information.
too.
And
We
how,
had some very astute females in there too. That was, I don't want to seem like I'm trying to disparage females or anything, but that was just surprising to
Mhm.
me that there were more sophisticated females in the class than there were males that
Mhm.
understood, these things. And that I was just kind of like,
Yeah, you had individuals that were already working on structuring through the private placement
yes,
memorandums
it was.
on some of their projects and their businesses.
Yes,
And
it
so
was.
uh, that's what this is about. Individuals learning what are real guidelines as it relates to DTC, as it relates to private placement memorandums, and not theoretical information that could harm them or take them away from their families.
That's the key right there. You said theoretical information. A long time ago, I decided to get away from that. I came in like anybody else. I think we all get indoctrinated to a degree when we come in through the door. Everybody has their own individual problem or exigent circumstance that need to be taken care of. Either they have a child support issue, or they have a criminal case, or they have a mortgage foreclosure, or inundated with some sort of bills or something like
Hmm.
that. So somebody has some sort of problem
Right.
and they're looking for some sort of solution
Solution.
to their
Yeah.
problem.
And people need solutions. And when someone come along with theoretical information to solve it, I remember my father, and I told you this before,
Right.
and perhaps some of your listeners may remember this. I remember he was waiting on someone to offset his mortgage to get it
Right.
paid off. And he was so excited about it. He really was excited about it. And I was excited for him too. And he had built his dream home. He had a mortgage on it. And as he got older, he started getting sick and work was a little bit slow. And he's like, yeah, they're getting ready to pay my mortgage off. They're getting ready to pay my mortgage off. And we would help him out with his mortgage so he wouldn't lose his home. And he's, yeah, but they're getting ready to do it next week. They're getting ready to do it next week. And, this went on for 3 years. And I had no clue who, what, and where. And it wasn't until I came into this space of straw man, corporation, blah, 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 the entire works. That I finally understood that someone was taking money from my dad, giving him claims because every time he turned around, he was having to come up with $2,500. Why? He hadn't paid his mortgage. He was behind. And he thought if he could scrape up the $2,500, and we're talking about almost 25 years ago, if he scraped that money up, that would take away his problem. And it didn't. And I'm sure he stayed up sleepless nights wondering if he would lose his home. And fortunately, he had enough children that we didn't allow that to happen. But it was the theoretical information that he was excited about, that he continued to live his life under, and he didn't make good decisions because of the theoretical information.
You know, that's one thing that with my class, I try to protect all my students against the theoretical information. I went through this and, I'm discharging mortgages and I've had a lot more failures than successes, but the successes taught me a lot and the failures taught me a lot. Of course, you witnessed me going into court on foreclosures and things of that nature. And I've had failures and I've had successes. That's why I try to manage expectations because I think what really
because there was no real win.
It's not a win.
It's a temporary kick the can down the road.
I would agree with that.
I've seen you discharge notes before.
Yeah.
And I've seen them come back.
They do come back, and then there's some that haven't come back. Like
right.
I got houses right now that
I know you do.
in Atlanta right now that I've had about 18
But it's
years.
a roll of the dice,
It
right?
is a roll of the dice, and it's a lot of work.
Right.
See, I don't think what they understand is the work that is involved in it. It's like, okay, when you discharge a house, okay, first you have to create a negotiable instrument.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do an administrative process on it. There are going to be kickbacks on that administrative process. There are going to be courtroom appearances on that administrative process at times. And imagine you got 17 or 20 houses you're doing that on, and all of them are in foreclosure.
And can I say something? Now
that
we're talking about this, when you were doing that, you were in the window of notes being challenged all over the place that were legally challenged. Now that I'm thinking about what I know about the note business,
the note arguments.
There was an enormous, even when Lehman Brothers went out of business, who was the holder of many notes, and there were literally over 1 million houses that slipped through the cracks. Actually, my sister owns. I have a brother and sister who own a house that slipped through the cracks.
There were a lot of people who did get their houses free and clear.
That was the height of the movement too.
It was the height. I would say that was around between 2009 and 2012.
Right.
That was that. I called it the foreclosure debacle, and that was when Obama had he had to come in at the tail end of that and do the bailout. And here's a question to all of you. If Obama bailed out all the toxic mortgages, why y'all still paying mortgages? See, you go into the election and address the wrong things. Okay, these mortgages were insured first and foremost, and then he went and borrowed $2 trillion to bail out these banks who had made these toxic loans. I remember I had an attorney on my show. And we were talking about all of this, and I asked him that question. I said, why are we still paying mortgages? He hung up the phone. And see, these are the questions that people don't ask. They get distracted by racism and things like that. But why aren't you going to your public officials and saying, hey, look, you just went to the Federal Reserve, bought $2 trillion in our name that we got to pay back, the American people, to pay off toxic mortgages. Why are you still paying mortgages?
But now, do you understand why that was done?
Maybe not. Maybe you can explain.
It had nothing to do with paying off the mortgages. It had everything to do with the United States credit rating that prevented.
I agree, but where did $2 trillion go?
Well, the $2 trillion was just a byproduct.
But where did it go? Somebody got that money.
Well, it just trickled down all the way back up and around. But,
somebody got it.
It was the bailout was nothing but a money grab.
Of course, they're all money grabs.
Right. It was nothing but a money grab that you go take down money and all your cohorts that are around the administration, and it was all divvied out, much like the PPP, private placement. I mean PPP money
PPP
doing
loans, yeah.
through COVID, and they knew what they were doing. Hey, let's just throw the money out there because it's all going to come back
Well,
anyway.
shouldn't the American people, though, require transparency? Because we are the sureties for those loans. We pay that back with our taxes.
I agree, but can we talk about reality of it?
I understand the reality, but the reality is that the American people are deserving some sort of transparency, and they will never get that if they never assert it. Is my point.
I can't argue that point, and I've seen you assert it.
I have, and it is a battle, and
Yeah.
it's a tough battle when you're doing it by yourself.
Right.
And that's why I went to, you know this, you know for a fact what happened to me. I had a house in Ackworth, Georgia, and I got raided. They pulled guns on me, and all this kind of stuff. You remember when all that happened, and that's when I decided. I was like, look, I'm gonna get out. That's when I got out of the foreclosure business.
But you weighed out the value that it was a roll of the dice, because what one court, how they saw it, another court saw it different.
Right.
And where you may have had a judge that was a passive judge versus a defender of the law, go get him, and didn't even have standing. They didn't even have standing to do what they did. But what was the reality of it? They did. They came. And again, when I ask or question or raise thought process to your audience, do you want to roll that dice for your children?
Well, that's what I try to do. When I came into this space, I'd been doing this, probably been doing this about 7 years before I ever start teaching it, all of this. And, so I tried to bring reality and manage expectations, because, there are a lot of individuals, they preach, oh, you can discharge your mortgage. I'm like, look, yeah, you can discharge your mortgage, but it's not as easy as just that.
And the problem with that is that individuals will put their life, hope, and expectations on that, and it doesn't work out. And it could be devastating to the outcome of the family.
I had this really hurt me one time. I was helping this family, right? And all this is, just added to my storehouse of knowledge. It was a foreclosure, and it was a family, and I was helping and I was, at this time, I was pretty successful with stopping off foreclosures, but I went and filed paperwork at the courthouse, and it didn't have the numbers numbered at the bottom of the page. And this is why anytime you see me now, I always put page 1 of 2, or 1 of 5, 2 of 5, 3 of 5 at the bottom, because they removed portions of the paperwork, because it wasn't numbered. So it was like, when I looked in the file, I'm like, well, hey, all the pages aren't here. Well, I didn't number the pages. I didn't let them know. And so there are different tactics I'm not trying to say everybody in the public is on the up and up. I've been in doing this a long time. I've seen corruption. You don't have to preach that to me, but there is an onus on you to cover your bases. And that's why this webinar that I'm coming to, these are the things that you're going to benefit from. I did foreclosure defense. I did discharging mortgages. I did criminal cases. I did GSA bonds. I've done a lot of the things that y'all talking about. I'm the one who put out there: birth certificate authentication, passport processes, these things right here. I've been doing this for a very long time. So I'm holding a webinar on the 29th and the 30th. You can go over to SBC University. I'm going to tell you straight up, it's $297. It's going to be a 2-day webinar. He don't think I should do 2 days. He don't think I should.
That's too much. That's too much information.
That's too much information. Okay, but that's how.
If it's too much information, tell your listeners, throw hearts up.
Is it too much information? Throw up hearts. He said, if it's too much information, throw up hearts.
Too much information.
If it's too much information, throw up hearts.
If it's not too much information, throw up thumbs.
The reason I'm doing it is because, I've kind of stayed away from these topics. I'm trying to bring clarity to the space, but I see that, hey, look, people mad at me for that. Okay, I'm going to give you the information. I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to give it to you raw. Okay. I'm going to give it to you like you ain't never heard it before, like you have never seen it before. I'm going to give it to you. I've been in this 20 years. I'm probably the last OG in this space, and I'm going to give it to you raw so you can understand. And it's going to bring a lot of correction to the space as well. And also, it's going to create a platform for you to springboard into what he's talking about. Because once you understand securitization, the next natural transition over into private placement memorandums and things of that nature. Once you understand how securitization works, I mean,
You had a bunch of hearts go up. Too much information. Too much
I
information.
appreciate that. I appreciate that. I appreciate that, everybody. I appreciate that. You know, I've been doing this for a long time. And Mr. Brewer, we both been in this, but we've been knowing each other long. How long have we been knowing each other?
At least 17,
About 17 years, something like
17
that. Been a
years now.
long time, you know.
Mhm.
And when I brought him, and you see that I don't bring many people on my show. And I only bring authentic, real deal people. And just like him, he's seen things I've seen things that he's done. He's not just talking about it. So you know, he's the real deal. And so
Maybe you can do the webinar and it stay focused on helping those individuals that I would poll them as they get on the webinar. They just want all the facts and not the disputes.
yeah, that's what I plan on doing. I plan on just presenting all the facts. You know, I'm just going to give all my experience in it. You know, I got experience. It's not just theoretical. You know,
I know.
I've been to
I know.
court a lot.
I know.
I've been in court. They don't see me go to court nowadays. Oh, where's your videos if you're in court? Well, I was doing this before there was even social media.
But when you were going to court, you didn't teach this. You didn't.
No, I wasn't teaching and nothing.
You lived it. You actually.
I was living it.
You was living it.
Yeah, I was living it. And that's why I understand a lot of things they do. Like I know there are people out there.
They were going to court to try to show it, and I have yet to see a successful court video. Have you?
I don't think I've seen. I think I've seen a couple of right to travel successful videos where you know the judge is dismissed, and I ain't gonna lie, I've seen some dismissals,
But
not a lot.
but
You know, it's
but
probably
was
like
the dismissal
3%.
based on them not wanting to take it on, or was it based on
And that's the
actual
question. You know, a lot of times,
law
you know,
law
judges
abiding?
will just dismiss something because they don't feel like being bothered with it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they got so much on their plate, and they like, all right,
Yeah.
you go ahead with that. You got
I
that.
don't feel like I got a docket full. I don't feel like dealing with you. This is some minor things. You got that. Get out of here.
Yeah.
You know that happens. And but you know, as far as any type of validity, legally or lawfully, when you look into the case law, you know that's where I'm at now. I'm there now because after doing this for so many years, I'm tired of dealing with the theoretical. I only like to deal with things that I can substantiate.
Mhm.
And when you start operating from that arena, you will see that yes, there are remedies that are afforded to you, but it requires you to do the actual study. And you know, and that's why, you know, in this space, when you start talking about that, and I understand it, a lot of people, they don't have time to read things like that. That's why you have people like me. You know, we can come in, we can condense the information and present it to you in a format that's digestible, and you can take some small bites off of it instead of taking time to read a whole book, hours and things like that. I understand that. And trust me, I understand that. I really do understand that. But I do want to convey the message that you are never going to completely circumvent the requirements of you learning certain things. Okay. Nobody can do this for you. Nobody can go in court for you. That's why I stopped doing paperwork for people, because when you do paperwork for people, they get paperwork, they don't know what they have. And then when they're in court, they're like a deer with the headlights on.
They have no clue because
They
they didn't do it themselves.
They didn't do it themselves. So, you know, after doing that for a little while, that's why I started teaching. I got into teaching because I started with the paperwork. Actually doing paperwork for people pay more. You charge a lot more money for doing paperwork for people, but
you're supposed to give it away for free.
I'm not giving nothing. Hey, listen, man, you know, they ain't giving up. When you study this as long as I have, and you gain 50 pounds and people on the internet calling you fat.
Yeah, you have.
Things like that, you know.
It's like, you have picked up a little weight.
Yeah, I picked up some weight, you know, but that's because I'm sitting in front of a computer screen all the time and I'm spending hours teaching classes and doing things like that. No excuse.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna take care of that. However, I do just want to convey that to let you know the level of dedication and commitment that I've had to this space. Many of you have been following me. You see, I've been on the air for 20 years. I've changed, I've grown, I changed formats. You see, I give you different quality type of material and things like that. That's because I reinvest in this space. I don't just take your money, go out and buy some, I don't drive a Lamborghini or anything like that, though I probably could. Though I probably could. You don't see me doing those type of things because
Well, not when you're disputing people for free.
I agree with that. I agree. Well, hey, let me tell you this.
Well,
We're gonna do some more webinars.
yeah, I mean, if they'll have me back.
I think that I'm gonna set up some stuff and
If they'll have me back, I'm not sure if my information is what they're looking for. I'm not
yeah,
sure.
it is because yes, it is
Mhm.
because in this space, that's why I wanted to have you on. When I brought you in, I say, man, these people don't understand how the DTC actually operates, how private placement memorandums actually operate, how you can take something from nothing and make it into something big.
Okay.
Just having the right information, and that is what I want to convey to all my listeners. Look, man, if you can't make money without money, you can't make money with money. Everything is about value. Can you create value? Can you create value? And
That's
that's
what
what
it's about. That's what it's about. Can you create value? Can you turn it into something of substance after you've created that value? Can you generate capital, raise capital to take on your project or enhance your business? And that's what it's about.
would you say ideas are valuable?
Oh, absolutely. It's far too many ideals have died with individuals that could have carried them out and changed the trajectory of the world. But they died with
They
those.
sit on them. They sitting at that idea, scratching in the back of your head. Every day you wake up, it's right there. I know that's what it was with me. Like when I started high frequency radio, um, I didn't want to do radio at first. A lot of people follow me. I'm like, man, I don't do radio. I've never done radio in my life. I'm not a radio personality. But every morning I woke up, there was this, you need to start a radio show. Every time I walk around, you need to start a radio show. 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 It just wouldn't leave. So I said, forget it. I finally took action. I got on the internet and I saw Blog Talk and it was $49. I said, I can afford that. And then I started a Blog Talk and I when I first started off, I probably had about 10 people listening to me. Just 10 people listening to me. And then I remember I met this guy. He was on Blog Talk. He had 750,000 listeners, and I happened to meet him at a restaurant. I forgot under what circumstances, and he gave me the game. He told me I'm gonna give you the game when we get to when you come into the webinar. I'm not gonna give it free over the internet, but he gave me the game, and when he gave me the game, I watched the analytics, and for the first 2 years of me broadcasting every month, I had more and more people listening. And y'all probably remember I had Paul David Savage Ale. He was my co-host, and what it was is he called me up like when I decided to. Well, this is what made me actually do it. He called me up one day. He used to work with me when I was doing foreclosures. And he called me up and he said, man, I really miss talking to you. He had moved to Philadelphia and he said, I miss talking to you. And then I told him, and he was a real cool guy and I really liked him a lot. And we were kind of close. And I told him, I said, look, man, I said, we gonna talk every day, but we're gonna talk. And we used to have conversations over the phone. I'm trying to tell you what this was my business plan. We used to just talk on the phone about, nationality, because he was a big nationality guy, Moorish nationality. And I was, doing secure party and we'd have debates and things like that. And I said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to have a radio show and all we're going to do is talk on the radio like we talk on the phone. And that's what we did. And every month for 2 years, more and more people listened to us. And that was how everything was born. And how I got the name Yusef Ale. I got the name Yusef Ale. I started out with Joseph Jones, which is actually my real name. Yusuf is just Arabic for Joseph. And but when I first started broadcasting, I was using my real name. But there were individuals in Maryland. There was a hotbed for Moors in the Brooklyn in Baltimore areas, Baltimore, New York, New Jersey. Those are the first group of people that started listening to me, and they were heavy Moorish population. So all of them who called in, it was El Bay this, El Bay this, El Bay this. But I had a name, Yusef El, because I was a part of an organization 20 years prior where I had been given the name Yusef El, but I never used it.
Mm.
So when the people, when they start calling it, I kind of wanted to use a name to kind of fit in with them. And when I used the name, it blew up through the roof. I can't even begin. And it got to a point where I didn't even know what my real name is anymore. I I call myself Yusef El. And I remember the first time I got popular, somebody flew me up to Baltimore, and they said, "We want you to come up here and do a seminar." And I'd never done a seminar before, and I agreed to do it. They flew me up, they paid for my plane ticket, they put me in a hotel, and it was at a church. It was at a church, and it was at a big church. So they came and picked me up at the hotel. Um, they as we were pulling up to the church parking lot was full. So in my mind, I'm thinking, man, they must be having church service or something, because I was thinking, this is how I'm thinking, because I know churches, they have like little rooms in the back, like little, where they do Sunday school and things like that. So this one I'm thinking in my mind, I say they must gonna take me to the Sunday school room in the back. And man, when I got into the church, they brought me into the main area, and I walked in, and it was packed. And as soon as I walked in, everybody in the room looked at me, and then they started cheering. And that's when I knew. I said, wow, I must be having an impact on people. That's when I realized, and I started really being careful. Like in inboxing, you don't find me inboxing things to women or things like that, or saying anything. I really started being real careful. Even though I cuss people
And
out.
you have to be careful of what information you put out, because you
Yeah.
have an obligation to not hurt someone's life.
My first priority was to make sure nobody got arrested, because I've gotten arrested before in the past, and I know the things that would
Hmm.
get people arrested. And so, that would be, I didn't want anybody saying I listened to Yusef El and I got arrested.
Correct. Correct.
So, so that was the first thing, don't get arrested. So I was very cautious in the information that I, gave to people, even though I knew a lot more than what I could have gave. But I'm like, well, this is too risky. They could go out, they could be successful, but they could end up getting arrested. Like, for instance, I'll give you an example. Probation.
Hmm.
I challenged probation. And I challenged probation before. I went hard in the paint against, probation, and I ended up on the losing end of it. I ended up on the losing end of that. But I did challenge the probation. And I challenged the probation. It was based off of a document that I read by Gene Keating. It was securitization is illegal. And in that document, no, it was the prison bond. It's not the Gene Keating transcript. It's the Gene Keating prison treatise. It's called the Gene Keating. Now, there's one Gene Keating prison treatise out there that discusses discharging of probation, but what you have to do. And one of them is you can't report, and that takes, do I really want to do that to individuals? Come out and tell you, if you want to get rid of your probation, when they call you in and tell you got to report, you can't come in.
Yeah,
How many people I'm going to tell to do that?
I don't think that'd be a good idea.
That's not going to be a good idea to do, even though in the end I did end up, because what happened, even though I got arrested after they let me out, which was after 2 days, everything was gone. But I didn't know that at first. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know. But the thing about it is with you is, are you willing to go through that, and do these things? I know when we were first told that a true sovereign, you're not a true sovereign until you've been in front of a judge. And there are a lot of things that I don't know if the average person is willing to endure to get what they call sovereignty. A lot of people, they talk about sovereignty as if you're going to file paperwork and get it. No, you're going to prove that you're a sovereign. Paperwork is not going to be sufficient to prove they're sovereign. That's going to be proven through your conduct, through your integrity, through your ability to withstand adversity, because they're going to test you.
Hmm.
And if you can't withstand the test, do you really think that you're going to file paperwork and that's going to be it? You're crazy. That's not how this works. And that's what I'm going to do with this seminar. You're going to get the real deal if you want to come and listen to me talk about the real deal. Not what these guys are telling you in these echo chambers have been doing about 3, 4, 5 years. LB this and this person. And I know a lot of you out there, you think, let me just say this. I'm going to speak to them real quick. Let me speak to them real quickly. I'm going to get back. I know it's a lot of you guys out there, you think you know. You don't know. You don't know. I read the comments. Yusef, I got to change his mind. He doesn't know that. I know 10 times more than you know. I have experience, years of experience. Oh, you could do this 20 years and do it wrong. Really? So you think I've been doing it 20 years and you don't think I know? I haven't seen not one single thing, any of you, not in the comments, not in anything that I haven't heard 100 times. And I mean that. I go for all you guys posting comments behind fake profiles and things like that. You don't know nothing. You think you do. You think that the Pope is in control of some foreign power. And you don't think I've heard that 1,000,000 times? Have you looked at the people I've interviewed? Vatican assassins. David Wynn Miller, Gene Keating. You don't think I have heard this 1,000,000? I've interviewed Dr. Francis Kels Welsing. The ISIS papers, keys to the colors. I've interviewed a lot of people over the years. I've had debates and conversations with a lot of people. There's nothing that any of you have said that I haven't heard. You're regurgitating. And what I'm trying to do is stop the regurgitation and get you on the pathway of independent research. Okay? Start studying for yourself, because what you're doing is, I'll give you the analogy and then we're going to end it. There was a woman who baked a cake. And when she had the dough, she would knead the dough and she would cut off the ends of her bread. And somebody asked her, "Why do you cut off the ends of your bread?" She said, "I don't know. That's what my mother used to do." So we went to the mother and said, "Your daughter, when she has her dough, before she bakes it, she cuts off the ends of her bread before she bakes it. Why does she do that?" She said, "I don't know. That's what my mother used to do." So we go to the grandmother and we said, "She's kneading the bread. And why do you cut off the end?" She said, "I don't know. That's what my mother." So we end up going to the great grandmother and we ask her, "Your daughters, when they bake the bread, they all cut off the ends of the dough before they put it in the pan. Why?" She said, "My pan was too short." You just follow things and you don't know why. Some of the things you follow are unnecessary. But you listen and you blindly follow. And that's the blind leading the blind. And when the blind leads the blind, both fall in the ditch.
Having said that,
that's it. Hey, look, we got webinar. Me and Mr. Brewer, we're going to be doing webinars, weekly webinars. We're going to reduce some prices for you. All right. We're going to reduce the prices and we're going to make them weekly. Okay. And we're going to build on the information. We're going to try to take you step by step through the information so you can get a grasp on it, because we understand that, if we give the information in bite-sized chunks, we think that give you time to digest the information, and over time you begin to become confident in the information.
You don't want to overload.
You don't want to overload. Mr. Brewer is the real deal. I stand by that. I've seen the things that he's done, and it's not just you can go to the Federal Reserve website and get information. You probably can.
Yeah, you can. It's public. It's public information.
It's public, but the reality is that the experience is a totally different thing.
But I encourage those that want to do that to do that.
Well, you can study. You can have ChatGPT make you a private trust.
You're correct. You're correct.
You can make ChatGPT.
What I do is for a select few, and for those. It takes a lot of due diligence. It takes a lot of digging in.
You ain't going to find that you're not getting this on the Federal Reserve website. He being modest. I'm going to tell you what it is. All right. So we're going to set this up for everybody, and it's going to be affordable. We're going to make it affordable for everyone. And we're we're looking forward to, giving you information that you can use, that you can actually implement. I know the lady, she called in my show. What have your students actually used? There's a lot of people have used the things that I've taught. I just don't parade them in front of you. Say, look here, here's one of my students. Look, go ahead and tell the people what I did for you. I've never done that. I've never been that kind of person. I don't care about that. I'm a teacher. Okay, first and foremost, and that's what I try to do. I try to teach information. I'm not interested in parading people in front of you and say, look what I did for this individual. Even though lately I've been trying to put some testimonials on my website, because my students, they're very important to me at SBC University. They know that. And I got class tonight, as a matter of fact, 9 o'clock. And my school is very important to me because I love teaching. I come from a family of teachers. And so I have found that about myself. And I love teaching and I love my students, and you don't attack my students under any circumstances.
All
Okay.
right.
They're going to defend me. I'm going to defend them. So, but anyway, I appreciate it. Look, y'all sign up, go to SPC University. Right over there right now, I have Mr. Brewer. If you want to get into his, he have a master class, right?
I do have a master class. I need to determine what date it is. That's if they're interested in it.
If you're interested in a master class, is personal one-on-one mentorship. Now, those of you who can afford that,
It's about 8 weeks.
it's about 8 weeks. You get in a personal mentorship for 8 weeks. It's $5,900. Is that right?
That's correct.
$5,900. Okay.
Something like that.
It's something like that. Go over there and see what the price is. But that's for an 8-week mentorship where he's actually going to take you
But
by
that's
the hand.
only for a few people.
He can't take everybody. You obviously can't personally mentorship 100 people unless I guess you're doing a class
No,
setting.
definitely wouldn't.
Yeah,
Definitely.
but this is for specific
few-
individual.
few-
That
few
price is
people.
not for a whole bunch of people. If you're an individual out there and you're watching and you're looking for some sort of personal mentorship, then you can sign up for that. I have a webinar that's going to be on the 29th and the 30th where I'm going to disseminate all the information I know. I'm not saying I know I'm the greatest teacher ever. I know it more than everybody else, even though I really do think that. I do think I.
Yeah, it's okay.
Even though I really think that, but I'm going to just give you everything I know. I'm gonna give you everything I know, and I think you're going to be very, very happy about it. I'm going back to the old school, the way I used to do things. But anyway, that's it.
That's good.
That's
That's great. Appreciate you all listening.
We appreciate you listening, and
I'll be back.
And we will be back on some future shows. And so y'all keep it locked. Hey, do this for me. I want you to just subscribe to the channel. All right, because we're going to be doing a lot of live presentations like this at least once weekly. So hit the notification button to make sure that you're notified when we're going to have something. Like today I just popped up on here, but we're going to start scheduling these things on a weekly basis. Go over to SPC University, sign up for the webinar. Do that because there's limited seating. We're getting past the point we're trying to take, just a infinite number of people and so forth. We're only interested in people who are really interested in this information, who are interested in learning, not somebody's looking for some sort of microwave remedy. I don't offer microwave remedies or anything like that. You're not going to find that here. We are interested in people who are actually interested in learning about these things, how it works, what can be substantiated and what cannot be substantiated. We're, interested in that. So keep it locked. Like, comment, and subscribe, and we will answer. We're going to answer all comments that you find in the that you write. We're really interested in your comments and the feedback that you have on this channel. So we look forward to that. Anyway, peace to everyone. I look to hear from you, and we'll see you on the next live webinar. Peace, everyone. I'm out.
See you later. All right.